Now, have we all seen? I mean, Adam McKay's been directing for a while. He's directed comedies, but he's as you know, old school Step Brothers. But he's recently kind of pivoted in the last maybe 7 years. I want to say Big Short came out in 2014. I want to say
Yeah.
last 7-8 years, he's pivoted to more politically minded comedy dramas. In so many words, I'm going to assume. Have we all seen The Big Short and Vice?
Yeah.
Have we seen
I
both
have.
of those?
I've actually not seen Vice, and I don't remember much of The Big Short because I think that was, guys, 2015. I'm actually really surprised by that because it's like those movies are like right up my alley. How have I seen all the other Will Ferrell shit he's done, but I haven't seen Big Short and Vice? I don't know. Or like, I think I caught Big Short. It doesn't matter, but I'm just gonna say no, which is astounding. But
You're
I
not
do know his
missing
rap.
much. You're not missing much with Vice.
Oh,
You're
really?
Not,
Okay.
you're not missing much with Vice, at least in my humble opinion. Big Short is good. And don't look up, though. I'm going to start by saying this. It had me very nervous in the beginning. Had me very nervous in the beginning of this movie because in the opening moments of this movie, the head of Planetary Defense Coordination is contacted. And one of those graphics comes up because a character,
Yeah.
I think it's Jennifer Lawrence's character, remarks that, like, is that
Right,
even
right.
a real place?
Yeah.
And then immediately on screen it says the Planetary Defense Coordination Office is a real place.
This is a
This
logo.
is their logo.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, like it worked for The Big Short because it was also different at the time. It worked for The Big Short. It didn't work for Vice. It takes you out of it. And I was relieved, though. That is, I think memory's fungible. That I think is the only real glaring instance where they break the fourth wall in this movie.
Is correct. Which I thought was really weird because, like, yeah, after I like Vice. I love The Big Short. I think Vice is all right. But, like, The Big Short, as Steve was even saying, like, it fits better in that movie because of the subject matter of it, the stock market crash and everything, and how confusing that is to anybody that really wasn't paying attention to what the hell was happening to them in 08, 09, and with the housing market crash and everything. That's kind of why I like that movie, because when it takes the time to actually stop, break the fourth wall, and be like, here's Margot Robbie in a bathtub to explain to you how this works. See if you can pay attention, and maybe you will because it's Margot Robbie in the bathtub. It's just like, I love that sense of humor with it. But I do agree with you. In Vice, half the time it worked. The other half of the time, it was a big distraction from the story. It really took you out of, like, what the hell was going on.
That almost felt like a joke from Adam McKay, like on a meta level. It's like, hey, this is what this movie is going to be like. No, it's not. It's like he straight up almost just comes out and says it by doing that in the beginning.
The Big Short worked due to the complexity of the subject matter.
Yeah.
Whereas Dick Cheney, I mean, his story, I don't want to say it's not complicated, but his legacy, I mean, we all, most of us lived through that. Now, we lived through the stock, the Great Recession, as I think it's known. We lived through that, but did we understand the complexities of it? That's a different question. Versus Dick Cheney, who's been a public figure since he's held office, or at least, his whole political career. Where I was, and the only thing I'll say too is, like, when Don't Look Up does it, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is the only instance where there's ever, like, the aid of on-screen text that's, like, glaringly nudging you about, like, what they're giving you, providing context in so many words. I think that is the only scene in the whole movie. And then the only thing is then when it ended, I remember thinking to myself, well, then why the hell did you inexplicably do that? Like, if you're either going to marry yourself to that or not, it's like Adam McKay could not let this one thing go. Like, he had to confirm that the Planetary Defense Coordination Office is indeed an actual coordination, is an actual, headquarter. But it doesn't matter. It's such a blink and you miss it moment to begin with too. But, like, my mind was, here we go again with McKay making Family Guy look linear in how many cutaways we're going to get throughout the course of the next 2 hours. And I will say that, just to open this, and I'll throw it over to Joe, is that Don't Look Up, though, if McKay is going to stick to this sort of politically minded comedy drama formula, that he's been married to for the last couple of years, it at least shows more of a dedication to narrative, especially coming off of Vice. It shows more of a dedication to narrative and world building and character building than I think even The Big Short, because The Big Short, even the movie, those characters were like chess pieces that he kept moving around and do in that, where these characters, they all embody, they're all symbolic of somebody or something or an institution as a whole. We'll get into that later. But he feels like this actually was like an effort of world building, character building, and more so metaphor over satire, in my opinion. What say you about Don't Look Up, Joe?
I will piggyback off of what you're saying right there. I do agree with you for the most part that yes, this actually is a better step in the right direction, I think, than Vice if he wants to continue doing this, because there are moments in this film that they parallel our world, but they do it enough. It's satire enough to where it could be its own thing, and you can take yourself out of like that, like, well, this will never happen in the real world. Yeah, like that's kind of the point of why it's a satire, guys. Like the amount of times I've read on the internet like this wouldn't happen. It's just like, yeah, that's the point. Like, they're taking a situation that could potentially happen to us and, like, really, running with it like South Park does. Anyways, I do think, it's a better step from McKay, but I do think the guy got lost a bit when it came to his own world building, because there are moments in this film where certain characters come in and elements of a story. Particularly, there's one actor, I need to look at the character's name, but Peter Ishwal, who's supposed to be kind of like a Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos type character, played by amazing actor Mark Rylance. He comes in, and I just kind of felt like his character didn't get enough either time to really cook on screen and really like develop of who he is, as well as this whole like social media thing that he creates that I feel like was thrown into the middle of the movie. They tried playing with it, and then McKay's just like, screw it. Next thing. News anchors in the morning, like GMA and all this other stuff. How do they act? And, like, he nails that. And then he's just like, you know who I want to bring into this movie? A Donald Trump Jr. archetype. And it's like, dude, all right, we don't need that in the movies. SNL has got us covered for, like, the past 2 years already. Like, I'm kind of done with this. No, Jonah Hill, come here. And he comes in, and he does this whole shtick, and it's just like, oh, Jesus Christ. And it's like, okay, wait. What if the world's about to end and meme culture just memes the hell out of the world ending? Okay, that's realistic and that's great. There is such a good balance of like, I actually shouldn't say balance. There's just there's a divide of like stuff that really works well. Like when literally the internet memes Leonardo DiCaprio's character, who is an astronomer, to an ALIF astronomer I like to fuck. And I thought that was hilarious. And then there's moments where it's just like, it's too on the nose, and I feel like it's just not working because McKay and, even Jonah Hill and Jennifer Lawrence said there's a lot of ad-libbing on set when they filmed this movie, and that's exactly how I felt with a lot of scenes. And when it came to Meryl Streep's character, who is embodiment, and a lot of people have said it's Trump, but like, I see what McKay was actually really doing here, and he's actually come out and like even interviewed about it. It's kind of an embodiment of all these presidents that we've had recently. The, like, the celebrity status that Obama had. The, I think, like, he compared it to Bush's, compared it to something with George Bush. But, yeah, of course, Trump is even in there as well. And even Clinton in some ways, that she's kind of embodying all these aspects. But by the end of the movie, it's just straight up Trump at that point. It leaves all that behind. And there's moments where it's like, that stuff's not working. And you have the other stuff where it's like the internet, the GMA parody with Cate Blanchett, and an amazing performance again from Tyler Perry when he's not in his own directed stuff. And it's just like, dude, why do you have like such good material that like I feel like sometimes you get lost in your own anger about the world, that you lose focus of what you're trying to say in your very own film. Just like I'm losing focus, I think, kind of how I'm ranting here, because McKay even has me confused. Dom, you can take it.
No, I get it. I 100% get it. This is a hurricane of a movie.
Yeah.
And that's how, if you think that's a compliment or a negative, that's
up to you, man.
It's up to you. Yeah. This is, Adam McKay would absolutely be the one to go for the satire of our times, you know, the great comedy of our generation. It makes perfect sense that he'd be the guy to try and do that. And I think, unfortunately, he misses the mark. This, not a bad movie. I had fun with this movie, but where it kind of stands where it will stand in the history of cinema and all that stuff, it reminds me of two movies, actually, similar as to kind of like satires of their times. And that is Idiocracy as well as Doctor Strangelove.
Oh,
from
that's
the-
such
from
a
the
good
60s.
comparison.
Those are good comps.
Of these three movies, they're seeming. I'm sorry, I should start with Strangelove and Idiocracy, right? Seemingly polar opposites, but they do such a fantastic job of perfectly encapsulating the spectrums of satire. Idiocracy is just complete balls to the wall. Everyone is dumb. This is how dumb everything is, and it's dumb.
I'll just
Dumb
interrupt
at a
you and
cracker.
say I'm so glad, as somebody who saw Idiocracy like the week it came to DVD. I'm
Yeah,
so
same
glad
here.
that movie has gone on to have the staying power.
Yes.
Especially after how badly they botched it. And there's been some stuff that's come out about the release about that movie, about how Terry Crews said they paid all these companies to come out and be in the movie, or these companies paid to be in the movie, and they did not know how they were going to be portrayed. And like they buried it because they didn't want to offend the advertisers. That's what Terry Crews came out and said. He goes, it was studio sabotage because they were so worried about these companies back, you know what I mean? Suing or whatever. So he's like, I think Fox was behind it. Fox wanted to ensure that as few people saw this thing as possible. So it's amazing in a way that Idiocracy has become so well known, and I'm grateful for it because that's one of Mike Judge's best films.
Let me say that Don't Look Up, the best thing that has come out of that movie for me is that I get to talk to people about Doctor Strangelove and Idiocracy. But Idiocracy is that. Just watch the movie and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And then Strangelove it hits the same target and it hits the same message, but that movie is the perfect balance of dry and ridiculous. You've got Peter Sellers in the same actor doing three roles, literally a wheelchair bound evil Nazi scientist, and then the president of the United States acting against himself in the same room while nuclear Armageddon is happening all around them. But it's so dry and so sharp, and so it's like, I mean, this is not controversial at all to say that Doctor Strangelove is clever. But when you look at that movie, it's like, God damn, that's freaking clever, dude. It's like when you look at George Carlin, where it's like, yeah, dude, that's just clever. Maybe you don't even laugh. You're not like belly laughing like you do with some other comedians, but it's like, yeah, that's freaking that's clever, and you kind of get high off your own ass about it, but whatever.
I got
Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up lands in the middle. And it's not a crash and burn disaster, but it's not the smoothest ride either.
Yeah.
And Joe, I think you hit it too, where it's like, yeah, it gets lost in itself, which I haven't seen Adam McKay's Big Short or Vice, but I have a feeling this has been an increasing pattern with from those movies. But it gets lost in its own world, in its own message, and I've heard some criticism that you can't make these kinds of movies anymore in a post 2016, post Trump, post 2021. I refute that entirely. There's some great.
Definitely harder. It's definitely harder.
It's harder, but it's very much possible. I'm completely failing to remember some TV shows that have done it wonderfully just in the past few years. But it's definitely possible. But I don't think Don't Look Up is the one it's going for. Is the one to do it, is what I'm saying. So, in terms of being the satire of our times, culturally, it's looking actually to be that way. We'll get into that after the break about how people are receiving this, which I think is actually another great plus to this. But on its own merits, artistically, looking at it, I don't think it quite lands that, and it's quite hard to say. I think Joe hit a lot of the nails there. I guess I'll just kind of redundantly say too that, yeah, dude, there's just something about it's the line you toe between being overboard with it like Idiocracy, and then but also pulling back with restraint and being, knowing to actually be somewhat subtle about this, like Strangelove. I don't know. I think it was the Ariana Grande and
Kid Cudi.
And Kid Cudi. I was like, who's Scott Meducci? No. I kept on seeing that in the cast. So I was like, who the freak is that? I thought that was Kid Cudi. And yes, I was right. But I think it was those scenes.
Why don't we tell you about Sean Combs? Why don't we tell him who Sean Combs is?
they weren't even. None of this movie was a hot garbage. Let me just say, it sounds like I'm trending towards that, but none of it was. It was always a sense of like, almost there, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, goddamn, it's hard to put into words. And I think that's those scenes where they try to get into like, they make fun of celebrities, you know, Kim Kardashian, specifically Grande and Kid Cudi. It's not even their acting, to a degree, yes, but really it's the writing of it all. And it's like, it's that in between. I can't pinpoint any further than that, but it's that in between over the top and subtle that unfortunately permeates the rest of this film. And I think with that, I think we'll go to break. No, I don't know unless you guys want to. Yeah,
I just want to add on real quick. No, you're right on the head about how I feel about it, and I'd rather McKay do something like this, where like it might be scratching the surface. It's almost at where I think it should be, but not quite because he pulls back in a few places. I'd rather have a film like that than with Vice, where it was just straightforward and like he was just trying to do the same thing again. But it just was not working because of the subject material. And it's like we all knew who Dick Cheney was, as Steve was saying, and everything, that we didn't have to have these like breaks from like the movie to explain something. It's just like we didn't need that with Vice. And I really do like the fact that with Don't Look Up, he is trying to do something else. It really does seem like he's keeping in that same realm of this political satire comedy movie that he's been doing these with his last two films, but he at least tried something different with it, and I appreciate that way more than Vice